Welcome back to the Crypto channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, Bitcoin is perfectly starting to struggle in this exact area of resistance here, as we're also now perfectly playing out the overbought signal as predicted in the immediate short term. But while this is happening, we're seeing a retest in the US stock market of this area of support, and now once again bouncing from this area of support, which is something that we need to pay attention to for not just the stock market, but for the overall crypto market, telling us what to expect coming soon. And of course, Ethereum is also perfectly struggling at my exact level of resistance here, remaining in the sideways price range, while the price of Solana is also perfectly playing out this overbought signal in terms of the short-term moves here. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before taking a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, we need to take a quick look at the US stock market today, because this is the S&P 500 index on the 2-hour time frame, and we can see that throughout the trading day, we actually saw another short-term pullback, a short-term bearish movement during the same sideways price range here, because we simply retested this key area of support that I've been talking about for a long time now on the channel, which is still perfectly acting as support. Obviously, right now in the immediate short term, we're currently seeing yet another perfect bounce from this exact area of support. And so keep this in mind throughout the video. Obviously, it's quite likely we'll see something similar to this for a lot of the crypto market on average. That's usually the case when it comes to stocks and crypto. There's a high correlation, not a perfect one-to-one correlation, but of course, over the last one day, we did see that slight little cool off for the crypto market alongside the stock market, which was predicted if you watched my last video just yesterday, just in terms of the short-term moves here. But now that once again, we're seeing a slight little bounce in the stock market, we could potentially see something similar to this in the imminent short term for Bitcoin and crypto. So keep that in mind throughout the video. And just before taking a look at the Bitcoin charts today, we need to take a quick look at some Bitcoin news today, because we're continuing to see some quite large inflows coming in from Wall Street money, BlackRock buying big amounts of Bitcoin right now, and we can see that throughout the week so far. Obviously, Monday we started off the week with a quite large net inflow of almost $500 million. Tuesday, a net inflow of just under $250 million, and then Wednesday, as we can see right here, net inflow, the largest one so far this week, of almost $62 million, so almost $500 million US coming into the Bitcoin ETFs just on Wednesday. And keep in mind that average day for the Bitcoin ETFs, the average sort of inflows that we usually see is a net inflow of $104 million US. That's the average across all of the history of the spot Bitcoin ETFs on Wall Street. The average net inflow per day is around $100 million. And in the first 3 days of this week, we've seen over $1 billion in just 3 days. And yes, out of all of the individual ETFs, the largest buyer has been the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, due to the largest inflows coming into the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, which essentially means BlackRock as the fund is having to buy that amount of Bitcoin, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, on behalf of investors that are putting their money into that particular Bitcoin ETF. And so just keep this in mind. We are starting to see a major turnaround in the Wall Street money, accumulating hundreds of millions and now billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin in just the first 3 days of this week so far. And with that being said, taking a look at the Bitcoin charts today, looking at the weekly time frame, the super trend indicator is still sitting in the red, indicating a larger bear market or a larger correction in the price. And of course, we still have this massive bearish divergence to watch out for, which has not yet fully been invalidated. But with that being said, of course, like I mentioned in my last few videos here on the channel, we have hit oversold, and we're starting to now play out this oversold signal in the weekly Bitcoin RSI for the first time since around the middle of 2022. And now, obviously, an oversold signal by itself does not guarantee that we've hit the bottom. For example, the last time we saw this signal in middle of 2022, yes, over the next few weeks, over the next 1 month or so, we did actually see a decent bullish relief, a bit of a break from all of the bearish price action over the coming weeks. But if we're talking about the multi-month trend, that was not necessarily the final bottom. We ultimately still had one more major drop still to go. So just keep that in mind. That's still a potential risk that we need to be aware of. It's possible, I'm not saying any guarantees here, it's still possible we could ultimately go lower at some stage in the future, but at least if we're talking about the next few weeks or so, it is quite likely that we'll continue to hold above this local low and potentially continue just a little bit more of a relief in the somewhat short to midterm here in the coming weeks. And if we're taking a look at the 3-day Bitcoin price chart, obviously right now in the shorter term, the price price of Bitcoin is perfectly starting to struggle from my exact area of resistance that I've been warning about for a long time, sitting in between 72,000 to 76,000 based on previous resistance and also previous support flipping to new resistance in that area. Once again, expect the price to struggle or possibly reject from around that area on the price chart. And obviously, once again, in terms of the larger multi-month trend, technically this is still bearish. We've not yet fully confirmed a reversal or an end to the larger bearish trend. But with that being said, the first potential sign of a bullish reversal ending the larger bearish trends, the first sign that I'll be watching would be a breakout above this resistance. If we see a confirmed breakout with at least a 3-day candle close, ideally a weekly candle close above around 76,000, 77,000, and actually holding above that area, not breaking back to the downside, but breaking out and then holding above that area. In that situation, that would be the first strong signal pointing towards finally a reversal out of this larger bearish trend. But for now, once again, we've not yet seen that. So for all we know, this is just another shorter term relief that could last for a period of weeks, maybe a month or so, kind of like what we saw back here during the much larger bearish trend. And so those are still the signals and things that I'm watching out for on this time frame right here. And if we're taking a look at the 2-hour Bitcoin price chart, obviously in my last video right here, I said it's extremely likely that over the next 1 to 2 days, we're going to see some sort of cool off, most likely a slight pullback in the price is exactly what I said right here. You can check my last video because of course we hit overbought in the 2-hour Bitcoin RSI. And usually when we hit overbought, that is a pretty strong signal telling us that we're approaching the upper limit in terms of the short-term moves. Of course, it's possible we can ultimately go higher at some stage later on, but in terms of the immediate short-term moves, this is a signal telling us that we've gone too far to the upside too quickly and we need a bit of time to cool off, to reset the RSI, which usually means some sort of pullback or at best maybe some sideways price action. And so obviously over the last 1 day, that's been perfectly playing out exactly as predicted. And right now we have indeed reset back towards more neutral levels in the RSI. So now that we're obviously already reset here in the RSI, alongside now starting to see a bounce in the short term in the US stock market, my prediction moving forward is this pullback starting to slow a little bit, but not necessarily having another major bullish move straight away. So basically the price starting to settle a little bit over the next 1 day is quite likely. Now that we're back towards more neutral levels, we have reset a little bit. And of course, if we're looking at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, we don't really have a significant level of liquidity immediately below the price or above the price because we've already wiped out that massive area of liquidity that was previously sitting above the price. And then obviously the next decent level of liquidity towards the downside is all the way down here in the lower 60K area. But between now and then, would likely find a decent amount of support along the way. And in fact, now that the price of Bitcoin is starting to potentially break below this area at 71 to 72,000, and in fact, we did actually see 1 to 2 candle closes here on the 2-hour time frame below around 71,000. Now that this is potentially happening, and especially if we fail to get back above the area, if we start to struggle around this area, the next point of support I'll be watching is based on these previous highs flipping into new support, which is sitting at roughly 69,500 to almost 70,000. So just under 70,000 as the next key area of support, at least in the short term. But once again, when we're talking about the coming hours over the next 1 day or so, I do expect the price to continue to test this area, possibly find a bit of resistance around this area, start to struggle, obviously, considering we're still just underneath this massive resistance here at 72,000 to 76,000. I do not expect any major breakout in the next 1 to 2 days. I expect the price to struggle a little bit here, but basically start to slow down. This bearish move in the imminent short term is quite likely in terms of the next few hours and days. And so those are my exact predictions moving forward, the key levels and price targets to watch out for, and obviously what I'm expecting on different timeframes, short term, mid-term, and longer term. And if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of crypto or Bitcoin or anything, you need to be set up ready to go on a crypto exchange. And if you use the first link below the video in the description and in the pinned comment, that first link below the video will take you to this page right here over on the 2bit crypto exchange, which by the way is a no KYC exchange and is an exchange that I personally use myself. yourself, and simply just by making an account using that first link below the video. Once again, as you can see on this page right here, there's a 3.5 million USDT prize pool up for grabs simply just by trading crypto using that link. You could potentially win a major share in this huge prize pool here. So obviously, if you're going to be trading crypto anyway or preparing to take the next trading opportunity, you might as well check this out. You might as well take advantage of this. Once again, first link below the video. And remember, 2bit is also a no KYC exchange. But with that being said, taking a quick look at the Bitcoin dominance chart on the daily time frame, and right now in the imminent short term, we're seeing a slight little pullback after the previous decent short-term bounce. But for the most part, in terms of the larger trend and the larger momentum that we're seeing, overall, we're still relatively neutral. We're kind of just bouncing around relatively sideways in the Bitcoin dominance on the daily time frame, which means a lot of the major altcoins out there on average will still likely be performing very similar to whatever Bitcoin does. And if we're taking a look at Ethereum on the 3-day time frame, obviously the price of ETH looks almost identical to the Bitcoin price on the 3-day time frame. We've not yet fully confirmed the end or the reversal out of the larger multi-month bearish trend, but in terms of the short to mid-term, of course, we're still playing out that slight little relief, mostly choppy sideways price action over the last 1 month, and then a little bit more recently, of course, a slight bullish relief, continuing to play out the oversold signal, which is exactly what I've been saying every day for around a month now on the channel. All of this is still perfectly playing out here, but we're now starting to reject and struggle at my exact area of resistance here, which starts at roughly around 2.2k. But especially if we're taking a look at the daily time frame, this area of resistance is in between around 2150 to 2250. So basically slightly either side of 2.2k, we have strong resistance around there. And once again, so far, that's exactly where the price is starting to struggle at as expected. And like I said, for Bitcoin, I would only talk about a potential reversal finally out of the larger bearish trend if we confirm a strong breakout above around 2250, ideally above 2.3k, with candle closes above that level and actually holding above that area, not breaking back to the downside. If we do that, then that would be a strong bullish signal, finally potentially pointing towards, that'll be the first signal pointing towards a major reversal out of the larger bearish trend. But once again, we've not yet seen that confirmed breakout. We're still struggling around this exact resistance, which means at least for now, we're still in this same sideways price range, bouncing between roughly 1.8k to 2.2k, give or take. And obviously at the same time as the price running into this resistance, like I warned about in my last video, we were also confirming an overbought signal in the 2-hour Ethereum RSI, which is typically a signal that we see just before we start to see some sort of cool off, which is usually some sort of pullback in the price, which is exactly what I warned about in my last video. Once again, right around here, warning about most likely some sort of pullback coming next. And right now, that's perfectly played out, as we can see. And we've now reset the RSI down towards more neutral levels, which technically gives us more room back towards the upside. Obviously, in terms of the shorter term trend here, just on the 2-hour time frame, technically we are forming higher lows and higher highs, which is indeed the definition of a bullish trend. And so now that we've already reset this RSI, it is quite likely we'll start to see the price settle a little bit, maybe even see just a slight little bounce within the coming hours or over the next 1 day or so, especially now that we're starting to see some sort of bounce in the short term in the US stock market. And of course, simply follow what Bitcoin does to figure out what is likely going to happen for a lot of these altcoins. But remember, it is unlikely that we'll see a major breakout beyond around 2.2k, 2.3k, at least in the next couple of days. It is quite likely that at least for the next few days, maybe longer, but at least for the next few days, we'll continue to struggle around this resistance here, considering how significant this resistance is for the price of ETH. And if we're taking a look at XRP on the weekly time frame, obviously in terms of the larger or longer term trend, technically speaking, this is still currently bearish, still playing out this massive bearish divergence that I did actually warn about all the way back up here. But with that being said, of course, we're still holding and running into this major area of support here, sitting at around $1.30 to $1.40. So continue to expect a lot of support at that area. So not a lot changed on the weekly XRP price chart over the last 1 day. And if we're taking a look at the 3-day time frame, obviously we're also still trying to play out this oversold signal in the 3-day XRP RSI for the first time since around middle of 2024. But remember, an oversold signal by itself does not guarantee that we've hit the bottom. There is still the potential risk that we ultimately see another leg towards the downside at some stage later on. But if we're talking about the next few days, maybe the next few weeks or so, it is quite likely it will continue to hold above the local low here at around $1.13, which means expect more choppy sideways price action or potentially just a slight little bullish relief in the coming days or possibly weeks. And in terms of the imminent short-term moves, talking about the next 1 day, the next few hours or so, simply just follow my Bitcoin analysis, my Ethereum analysis, etc., to figure out what is likely going to happen for XRP and a lot of these altcoins in the immediate short term. And if we're taking a look at the price of Solana on the 3-day time frame, we can see that right now the price of Solana is following very similar price action to Bitcoin and Ethereum on the 3-day time frame. Obviously, not yet fully confirming the end or the reversal out of the larger multi-month trend, but we're now testing and starting to struggle at this major resistance here, which is sitting at roughly $95 to $105. And basically, we got within just a few cents, less than $1 of $95. And so far, that's exactly where we're starting to struggle at on the price chart. But technically, we're still trying to play out this oversold signal on the 3-day time frame, which means continue to expect either a sideways consolidation bouncing in this range right here, or potentially a little bit more of a bullish relief in the coming days or weeks, possibly seeing another test of this massive resistance in the coming days or weeks is a likely scenario. But remember, unless we start to see a major breakout and hold above that area, hold above around ideally $105, obviously, until we start to see those sort of signals, overall, we're still within the larger bearish trend. For all we know, this is just another short-term relief during the trend, kind of like what we saw just here. And if we're taking a look at the shorter term moves on the 2-hour time frame, of course, over the last 1 day, we've been perfectly playing out this overbought signal that I warned about in my last video, saying how it's extremely likely we're going to see some sort of cool off, most likely a bit of a pullback coming soon over the next 1 to 2 days. And now that's perfectly played out over the last 1 day, as we can see. We've now reset the RSI towards more neutral levels, which technically now gives us more room towards the upside again to continue this shorter term trend a little further towards the upside. But remember, what is just above the price here is that massive resistance that I just mentioned, which means it's likely that over the next day or so, we'll continue to struggle a little bit. It's unlikely we'll see a huge breakout straight away on the first attempt in the coming days. That is very unlikely. What is much more likely is we continue to struggle around this area on the price chart. So if we start to see a little bit more of a bounce here in the shorter term, obviously expect a lot of struggle around these highs. And if we're taking a look at the price of Chainlink on the 3-day time frame, it's a very similar situation for Chainlink. Not yet fully confirmed the end of the larger bearish trend, the multi-month trend, but the short to mid-term is obviously neutral to bullish, bouncing in this sideways price range, playing out a slight little bullish relief, testing this resistance, of course, trying to play out this oversold signal as well, exactly as predicted around a month ago. All of this still playing out here, and the resistance, which we are now testing, is sitting in between around $9.50 to $10. And so far, that's exactly where the price has started to struggle at, as expected. And obviously, at the same time as running into this major resistance here, $9.50 to $10, we also confirmed that overbought signal just yesterday, which I warned about in my last video here on the 2-hour Chainlink RSI. We hit overbought, and once again, usually when we hit overbought, that's a signal telling us that we're going too far to the upside too quickly, and we need a bit of time to cool off coming next, which usually means at least some sort of pullback in the price as a very likely scenario. So obviously all of that's still playing out exactly as predicted, but now that we've reset the RSI towards more neutral levels, it is quite likely we'll start to see a little slowdown of the pullback here, possibly even a slight little bounce. But remember, considering the massive resistance at $9.50 to $10, it's unlikely we'll see a huge move beyond that area, at least when we're talking about the next couple of days. It's possible that within the next couple of weeks, that could potentially happen if we see some more bullish price action for stocks and Bitcoin, for example. But right now, just in the next 1 or 2 days, it is quite likely we'll continue to struggle at this resistance at $9.50 to $10, which means if we start to see another bounce here, obviously expect a lot of struggle around these highs. And so overall, those are my exact predictions, the key levels and signals to watch out for moving forward, the midterm, the long term, and the shorter term for all of these crypto assets. And once again, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of Bitcoin or any crypto, check out the links below this video to those exchanges if you want to take advantage of massive bonuses available using those links to trade crypto. And of course, if you want to know how you can trade crypto no matter what direction the price goes, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen, because the video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.